Hey friend, this is episode number 581 of the And So podcast with Taylor Bradford. Let's get to it. Boss Girl Creative presents And So with Taylor Bradford, business and life musings from a successful serial entrepreneur. Each week, you will hear Taylor spill the tea on all things business, life, relationships, health, and everything in between. But don't worry, each week also includes a business nugget that will help you stay on course. And now a throwback to 3-year-old Taylor who inspired all of this.
And so.
Hello, welcome to episode 581. I'm your host, Taylor Bradford. Thank you so much for hitting that play button. We are going to be talking about we're addicted to what's next in this week's business nugget. Before we get there, let's circle up with what's been going on in my world in the last week. So in the garden, I nearly have all of my new sprinklers in for the melons that are growing. This has been a long time coming. I should have done it a long time ago, but here we are. Actually, we had enough rain that I didn't have to have it installed, and then I should have had it installed before all the weeds took over. But anyways, we're on track. I actually ran out of tubing last night and have to go get some today so that we can finish, but there's not much left to finish, so that's good. We also pulled the old corn husks out of their row and prepped the bed for another round. So I got I put fertilizer into the soil, got it scratched in, and then the sprinklers were coming on this morning at 2 a.m. So that will help pull those nutrients down into the soil with water. And then we are planting out corn today. It is leading into the next full moon, which is always a powerful time to sow anything into your garden. So looking forward to another round of corn. The house drywall is finished. So the level 5 finish is finished. And we are going to be doing a walkthrough today. Tile starts next and trim starts soon. I just have to get my credit card on file for the trim supply company. And so that's exciting. All right, let's move into books. I actually managed to get some books read in the last week. First up is Murder by Design, Edison Bixby #1 by Lee Goldberg. 5 stars. Here is the synopsis. I actually really enjoyed this book. In a world carefully constructed for murder, solving crimes takes a keen mind and eye in a witty, clever, and fresh reinvention of the whodunit. Edison Bixby is wealthy, handsome, and due to a traumatic brain injury, impulsively rude. He's also a brilliant insurance investigator who solves baffling crimes by figuring out how the design of the man-made world around us makes them possible. Enter Wally, a struggling actor hired to keep Bixby from offending everyone he meets. Their first case together looks like a simple accident. Caroline Crowley took a nasty fall down a staircase at a shopping mall in front of dozens of witnesses. Video clearly shows the deadly misstep. But Bixby is certain she was murdered by design, subtly manipulated into causing her own demise. The mall itself made the crime intentional, if not inevitable. Now Bixby must prove his outrageous theory before a very cunning killer gets others on his list to murder themselves too. Next book that I finished, Off the Record by Sarah Goodman Confino, and that one was 5 stars. Here's the synopsis. An aspiring newspaper reporter comes across a mystery that threatens to turn the Cold War hot in a funny, thrilling, and strictly undercover romantic comedy by the best-selling author of Don't Forget to Write. In 1962, opportunities are typically few for nice Jewish girls clacking away at 90 words per minute in a newspaper typing pool, except Judy Greenberg isn't typical. An aspiring reporter in D.C., she's aiming for journalistic greatness, not finding a husband. Just don't tell her mother. Then one day she answers her boss's private line. The message is curiously cryptic. It also is delivered in a Russian accent. Judy is certain she has stumbled upon a scoop. Charming reporter Jack Fields isn't one to dismiss Judy's instincts. Perfect. A seasoned ally she can trust, not to mention pass off as a pretend boyfriend around her relieved parents. Together, they're following the leads from a clandestine hotel bar to the dressing room of a slinky Cuban nightclub singer to an exhilarating underground of secrets and spies stretching from Moscow to Havana to Texas. Now Judy must choose between the safe life expected of her or one hell of a dangerous story that could make her career. She might even fall in love for real, if her ambitions don't get her killed. And then finally, I read Calico by Lee Goldberg. 5 stars on this one. Here's that synopsis. A man walks into the path of an oncoming motorhome in the Mojave Desert. He's dressed like an 1880s miner. His bones are over 100 years old. Welcome to Barstow. Detective Beth McDade was an LAPD homicide cop until she wasn't. Now she's working the graveyard shift in a town nobody chooses, and she has a body in Yermo she can't explain. The security camera caught the dead man running into traffic seconds after a flash of lightning that wasn't really lightning, more like something tearing a hole in the sky. Days later, an LA food blogger vanishes off the same stretch of Interstate 15. The last footage of him alive shows him buying beef jerky at a gas station up the road. When his skeleton turns up, 100 years in the ground, and the dental records match the man on camera, Beth realizes something out there in the desert is moving people through time, and it's been doing it for a very long time. Oh my gosh, those books, all 3 of them, were really good reads, and now I'm just down this rabbit hole of more Lee Goldberg books, and also Sarah Goodman Confino's books. That was a lovely book week that I had. All right, let's get into the first segment of the show. Unhinged comments from people on the internet. So I realize what triggers these unhinged comments is people having very strong opinions about the content you are actually creating, which is where they come out of the woodwork. So 4 people I actually screenshot this week. Let me get into those 4. First up, David Scott, STFU, exclamation point. I will not say all of those words, but shut the F up. So thanks, David. Appreciate that. Blocked, goodbye. The Davids came out in full force this week. David number 2 said, seems like yours are too. And I said, mine are what? And he said, your peppers appear to be missing their bodyguards. I was literally like, pretty sure I saw them in the video, but thank you. Blocked, goodbye. The next one wasn't really unhinged, but it sounded like they were trying to take up for a person last week that was an unhinged comment, and it's Michelle, and she says, it's good to know all that can be planted. And I said, I'm aware, which is why you will find fall gardening content already on my page. This just happened to be about potatoes. I can't tell you how many people were literally like, but what else do we do? And it's like, this one was about my own potato experiment and why I'm going to try them again in the fall and probably not grow them in the spring. But go to my page and see all the other fall content that's specific to fall that I've already created. So thanks, Michelle, for standing up for another unhinged commenter, but really this one was about potatoes. And then Todd said, don't bother, it's not going to be better. Thanks, Todd. I said, how do you know? There are lots of people in my zone who do well with potatoes for fall. So peppers and potatoes were triggers for people and their unhinged comments for the week. And that wraps up this week's segment. Unhinged comments. Let's move into the next one. Search bar confessions. Okay, so I had a very short Google list this week because I was reading. That keeps me from diving into Google's. But bread machine sourdough discard recipe. I wanted to know if I could do it in my bread machine. Quick sourdough discard recipes. I really wanted to make something, but then chose not to. Mesh bags to protect melons. That is a thing when people have pests that are attacking their melons. Elbow tendonitis. Yep, I diagnosed myself. I have tendonitis in my elbow, and it's from gardening. You can hurt yourself gardening. And then I had a debtor call me about an RV that is in my facility. And I was like, is this legit? Like, can they actually come take this person's RV without them communicating that somebody's coming to take their RV? And it is a legit thing in Texas, but they do have to show paperwork showing where they have an order to go get it. They can't just show up. And I was like, she first wanted to just confirm it was there. And anyways, I reached out to the customer and was like, hey, this is what's going on. And he was like, yeah, they were supposed to call me. We're just letting it go back. And I'm like, well, okay, they didn't. So what would you like me to communicate back? And so anyways, I do have to call back and say, yes, it is here. And then 2 more, jalapeno lime salt recipe. I saw somebody make this in their own farm stand. And then full moon, July 2026. What is it called? It is called the Buck Moon, which is happening the day this episode is released. And how fun is that? And that just is a signal to the male deer that their antlers, their velvet antlers, are like on display. They get their velvet antlers. And that wraps up this week's Search Bar Confessions. All right, now let's dive into this week's business nugget. We are addicted to what is next. And I was just thinking about this because I saw somebody on Instagram sharing about, like, how do we get back to that 90s childhood with our own kids? And I don't have kids, but my sister-in-law has a 2-year-old. And, like, everything is on demand. We can access everything on demand, which is crazy because we did not have that when we were children. And how do you get back to that? And basically this mom was like, I created a calendar and I'm just blaming the calendar. Oh, sorry, it's on the calendar. We can't do anything about it. It's on the calendar. And so she's like got mac and cheese Tuesdays and Bluey episodes Wednesdays, because the thought concept is, as kids, we couldn't watch cartoons until Saturday morning. Like, it was Saturday morning cartoons. And like, that is such a great like concept for limiting screen time for children. Oh, well, Saturday morning is when we watch cartoons. There's no cartoons between now and Saturday morning because it was not on demand. If you wanted cartoons, you got up on Saturday morning and you watched them. So that's kind of where I'm going with this week's business nugget, is that we are literally addicted to what is next because of how quickly we can gain access to information. And I feel like as business owners, we do ask, what should I do next? And if you listen to last week's episode, I dabbled into a lot of different things when it comes to what we should be doing next in our business. And this week I'm focusing on, like, we are addicted to what's next. How do we slow that down? So before you create another offer or you start another platform or you change your actual strategy or completely reposition your business, you need to look honestly at the evidence already in front of you, because the next move isn't really new. It's doing more of the thing that is already gaining traction, but hasn't been given enough time or consistency or support or visibility to become what it could be. So the first step was figuring out what is already working. And it sounds obvious, but most of us don't slow down long enough to actually do it. We're trained to believe the answer is always something else, or what's next: a new offer, a new platform, a new funnel, a new brand, a new content strategy, a new direction. Because new feels productive, and new really like gives us that endorphin rush. It gives us a burst of energy, and it allows us to avoid the less exciting feelings attached to refining or repeating or promoting or improving. So for me and like where I'm at, I have multiple businesses, I have multiple offers, I have multiple content channels, and I'm always coming up with ideas. And I know how easy it is to see potential in something new, but potential and evidence aren't the same thing. So I'm feel like I'm incredibly good at seeing what something could become, but that can also make it very easy to overlook what is already trying to become something. So before asking what to create next, I want you to ask what is already giving me evidence that it wants more of my attention. So what does working actually mean? So a business owner may say nothing is working, when what they really mean is nothing has become wildly successful yet. Nothing is growing as quickly as I had hoped. Nothing has made the amount of money I expected. Nothing feels easy enough. Nothing has gone viral. Nothing has produced immediate certainty. But these are not the only signs something is working. Something may be working when people consistently respond to a certain topic. The same questions keep coming up. One offer is easier to explain than the others. People immediately understand why they need the thing that you have for sale. Customers come back. Customers refer other people. A particular piece of content keeps attracting the right audience. People save or share content even when the views aren't enormous. One revenue stream is becoming way more predictable. You have a process that is becoming easier to repeat. The work energizes you enough that you can stay consistent with it, and people are already asking for the next step. So this is an important distinction. Attention, trust, and revenue are different kinds of evidence. Something can create attention without creating revenue yet. Something can build trust without creating immediate visibility. Something can produce revenue without being the most publicly impressive part of your business. But that doesn't mean all three are equally valuable in every season, but you need to know what role each part of your business is playing. So, what is creating attention? What is creating trust? What is creating revenue? And is anything doing more than one of those things? The overlap is often where the strongest opportunity lives. So the next thing I want you to ask yourself, are you bored or is it actually not working? Sometimes we abandon the right strategy because we're tired of it before the audience has fully experienced it. You have talked about the offer repeatedly. You have created content around the topic repeatedly. You have looked at the sales page repeatedly, but your audience has not consumed all of your posts or all of your emails or all of your reels because they haven't studied your offer the way you have. Familiarity on the business owner side can feel like oversaturation. Repetition feels different to the creator than it does to the customer. You may be bored because you are deeply immersed in it, but your audience may only now be starting to recognize your messages. You may think, I've already talked about this, while your ideal customer is hearing it for the first time. So I want you to ask yourself these questions. Is the idea actually failing, or are you personally tired of talking about it? Have you promoted it consistently? Have you explained it in several different ways? Have you shown the problem, process, and result? Have you given it enough time to gather useful evidence? Being bored with your message is not the same thing as your audience being done with it. So when people don't respond immediately, business owners, we often start changing things. The name, the price, the promise, the audience, the content, the offer itself. And when we do that, we never gather enough consistent information to know what the real problem actually is. But I also want to talk about working doesn't mean it can stay exactly the same. I'm not saying people should blindly continue everything they have ever created, because here's the point. Recognizing what is working does not mean refusing to improve it. It means improving based on evidence instead of starting over based on emotion. So here's your reinvention of this sentence. This isn't moving quickly enough, so I need something completely different. Here's how you refine it. This is getting a response. How can I make the message, the path, the experience, or the offer stronger? So an existing idea may need one of the following: a clearer promise, better positioning, more consistent promotion, a stronger call to action, a simpler customer journey, more proof or examples, a different price, a better follow-up process, more time, or more of your focused attention. So you don't have to choose between keeping something exactly as it is and throwing the whole thing away. There is a large middle ground where real business growth happens, and that middle ground is where you start refining what it is that you're actually offering. Here's something else I'm not saying. I don't want you to confuse emotional attachment with evidence. Sometimes we don't abandon things too quickly, and sometimes we hold on to them too long because we want them to work. So I want you to ask yourself, if you feel like you're in this boat, am I continuing this because it is producing evidence, or because I have already invested so much into it? Do customers understand and want this? Or do I simply love the idea? Is this aligned with the business I'm building, or does closing it feel like admitting failure? There's a difference between an idea that needs more consistency, an idea that needs refinement, an idea that has repeatedly received no meaningful response, an idea that may work but no longer belongs in the business you want. I don't want to give you the excuse to use "give it more time" as permission to drag an unaligned offer around forever. We have to be willing to stop forcing what we want to work and pay attention to what people are already actually responding to. The evidence should influence the decision, even when the evidence isn't what we expected. So here are your next steps: a practical business audit. I want you to examine your last 90 days. Step 1 to this: identify what created attention. Ask yourself, which topics performed consistently? What did people share, save, reply to, or ask about? What attracted the right people, not simply the most people? And what conversations kept resurfacing? Step 2, I want you to identify what created trust. Ask yourself these questions. What made people respond personally? What content demonstrated your expertise? What stories helped people understand your perspective? What led someone to say, "This is exactly what I needed"? Step 3, I want you to identify what created revenue. Ask yourself these questions. What actually sold? What was easiest to sell? What had the healthiest profit? What brought repeat business? What required the least convincing? What produced revenue without creating unsustainable work? Step 4, I want you to look for overlap. Where do attention, trust, and revenue actually connect? For example, a topic consistently attracts people. Those people ask follow-up questions. You already have an offer that answers those questions, or customers who buy it are satisfied. That's your evidence. And it may not be enormous yet, but it is a path worth strengthening. And then finally, step 5, I want you to choose one thing to support. Ask yourself, what would happen if I gave this my focused attention for the next 90 days? Not forever, not as your one and only business identity, just long enough to promote, refine, and measure it properly through the steps that I just walked you through. Your next opportunity may not arrive as a brand new idea that makes you feel instantly inspired. It may look like the topic your audience keeps asking about, the product that quietly continues to sell, the service customers keep referring, the content people consistently save, the message you are personally tired of repeating, or the unfinished strategy you never fully supported. Before you decide what to add, identify what has already earned the right to receive more of your attention. What is creating attention? What is creating trust? What is creating revenue? Circle the areas of overlap and choose one thing to strengthen over the next 90 days. That's your homework. Your next idea may not be waiting for you in a new idea. It may be hiding inside the evidence you've been too busy to notice because we are so quick to have everything on demand that we sometimes forget to take a moment to do the work. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll be back next week.
And Phil. Let's go.
And like my 3-year-old self said, that is all for this week. Friendly reminder to rate and review my show wherever you are listening. And last but not least, I'd love to hear from you. Leave me an audio message at bossgirlcreative.com/speak. I would love to hear your takeaways, ideas for upcoming episode topics, and your feedback. Thank you again for listening to this week's episode. And until next time, I hope you have a great rest of this one.